all for being here. We're marking 20 years as a business, but rather than looking back, this conversation is really focusing on what has endured. Over the past 2 decades, marketing has gone through fundamental changes, through new platforms, new technologies, changes to data and privacy, and now AI. But despite all of that, some fundamentals haven't changed. What we're here to talk today is really what we're calling a timeless marketing truth. The fundamentals that are still influencing the performance and growth, regardless of how the landscape has been changing. So we'll structure this conversation around a few key themes: measurement and growth, data, AI, and audience behavior, and how it has changed and where we're seeing it staying static. Around the table today, we've got our leadership with us. We've got Lavinia Morris, the Managing Director for EMEA, CEO Kabir Chowdhury. We've got Chris Steedman, our Chief Revenue Officer, Roshat Adnani, Managing Director for APAC, and Jim Hamilton, the Managing Director for Americas. So if you had to take one measurement metric out of your dashboard tomorrow, what would it be?
I think from a performance marketer, sometimes you could maybe like to some degree CTR to a degree, like if you're looking all the way to ROI, what happens right at the start doesn't make a big difference. But I understand from a creative standpoint it's a big difference, but at times you don't need to look at that soon in the user journey.
You're not making some friends with
I know.
Top level marketing there.
Yeah.
I can't pick. I think they're all useful. It depends what your brand is, what your KPIs are. Each one has its own values. So I would really struggle if I didn't know who I was talking to.
Fair enough.
Question.
Yeah, I think like it's more to do with like impressions essentially, or impressions of views, because in this kind of an age where there is so much divided attention, I think an impression doesn't really mean anything when people are moving away from screens in every second or every millisecond essentially. So I feel that there was value for cost per impression in the past or cost per view, but I think it's more about the engagement, right? So it's about like what's the engagement of that view, or what was the result that came out of that view eventually.
Yeah.
So I feel it's the impression view part.
That really makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Both for performance and both for brand marketing. Yeah. We always say that data drives measurement. So is there over-relying on potentially imperfect measurement to make critical decisions?
I can go first, right? I think we of course, from a industry perspective, we kind of suffer from the ultra financialization of marketing data. I think we've reached a stage where there is a belief system where people believe that if they see it on a dashboard, it's the truth. However, we have to always take it with a pinch of salt, right? And of course, if you're using attribution and you're using incrementality testing and you're using MMM, you're trying to get almost as close to the truth as possible, but it's never going to be the truth, because it's more about, in marketing measurement, it's more about correlation than what is the other word? Yeah, causality. So it's more about correlation than causality. So thanks, Roshat, for the input.
So you mentioned attribution. So if attribution is directional, how should we define success then?
There's no one method which actually gives you the truth and the only truth, right? So we need to actually ensure that we take all methodologies together, and that's why at MNC Saatchi Performance, we believe in our measurement platform, which is OneView, which takes the trifecta of measurement from all three corners and is essentially trying to get you to the truth as much as possible. Eventually, it's all about long-term growth, right? For marketers, the investments that they're making right now needs to give them revenue in the long term, and that's what we try to optimize towards eventually.
The key thing is that imperfect. Each measurement approach on its own is imperfect, because when it's together, you look at the short term and the long term together, and you get the full picture.
Interesting.
And that's because measurement just gets more difficult. It's not getting easier; it's getting more difficult. Privacy-related constrictions, new mini walled gardens. It's harder and harder to actually get to clarity. And that's why there's different ways of looking at it, and it's about how we interpret those different lenses to make the best decisions for our clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think like the reason why, I think double clicking on what Kabir said, right? Like the job of measurement or marketing measurement is more from a correlation perspective. But what we try to do is have a causality created, and attribution is a method through which you create that causality, right? Like, oh, you clicked on an ad and then made a purchase, it's because of this ad you got the purchase, etc. But marketing's job has always been to get the customer to the place. Whether he makes the purchase or not, there are a lot of different factors into it, right? So I think like attribution is how we try to make it causality based rather than correlational.
And that's the role of the agency, to be that consultant to brands, to understand what doesn't make sense in each scenario. So we've got this unique perspective to sit across all platforms and approaches, across all markets, to understand what is the best way to measure, for each bespoke client's requirements.
And would you say that is actually something that has been true 20 years ago and still is true?
I think it's more complicated now than 20 years ago. I think we've got the situation of, it's the phrase of paralysis by analysis. It's like, it used to be a lot simpler. You'd buy your ad on TV, you'd see how it measured at the top level, and now there's so much more to measure, so many more platforms, more devices, so it is more complicated. That's why there's so much noise. You need to have that one source of truth, if you can, through a platform such as OneView, to make sense of that noise. But it's very tricky, and it's evolving all the time.
Why do we need to look at attribution and incrementality and MMM all together?
It goes back to the challenges of being able to actually accurately measure. I mean, the three have a different role, a different timeline. Attribution is, we use attribution in the short run within a platform to make sure that we're optimizing for the very specific campaigns that we have. Media mix modeling to plan over a period of months or quarters. And then in the longer term, we set up incrementality tests, if you will, to make sure that the media that we're recommending for our clients is actually driving results that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
Performance marketing has never been as measurable as it is in this day and age, and yet somehow growth is harder to achieve. So let's challenge a few assumptions here. That efficiency doesn't equal success anymore, and that more budget does not mean growth necessarily. So with performance marketing specifically, where do you think it starts to plateau, and why?
I can answer this. I think there's an art to performance planning, right? So if you focus too much on those demand KPIs, you will exhaust them. So if you were not looking at generating that demand, then that's where you start seeing that plateau occur, because you've maximized everything there and haven't created more attention. So that's where the art comes into that performance planning. And that is where I think you start to see the plateau.
There can always be too much of a good thing, right? We see diminishing returns. Every great idea runs out of steam, and that's why we always have to be innovating, because you do see those diminishing returns.
So if you could fix one lever out of everything we've got in our arsenal, so we're talking obviously creative, data, where we place our media, and of course measurement. So right now, what would you think unlock most growth for, let's say, majority of the clients? Obviously every client is different, but at scale.
Creative gives you so much breadth, and it's something that is very easy to evolve and improve on with the right data signals. So that is one that we work really closely with our clients to make sure that, as Chris said, that we're putting the right creatives in the right place. But that feels like the most tangible thing that's easy to change.
Maybe a little bit of product. Like, it's not just from a media, creative, data measurement perspective, but a large part of success actually depends on the product. And that is where we like to work with our clients, give them the recommendation in terms of the changes that the product can have, which can actually exponentially increase growth for them.
So question to you all, is first-party data truly the only durable advantage, or is it overrated?
Steve Jobs said that the consumer doesn't know what he wants, but 99% of the other companies only succeed when they know who their consumer is or what their consumer wants, right? Like there are very few Apple kind of a cases, but yeah, like in the end, the job of marketing is very simple: to know who the consumer is and to understand what they want. And the only way to do that is first party data, right? And like AI can help them, but again, like it's I don't see the two questions being related to each other. If every business that needs to survive needs to know their consumer, needs to understand who they are, where they are from, which is like first party data, whether there is AI or even 20 years ago when there was no AI that way, right? But yeah, like AI can definitely help you understand that a little better.
Yeah, it's as if like, if you look at the big platforms which now take up in the digital space 70% of the market, the Metas, the Googles, they've been built off the back of first party data. So that's clearly the advantage. I think AI just accelerates that and makes them smarter and faster and understand what the consumer wants next. So yeah.
I'm going to be controversial.
Go for it.
So many clients don't have first party data, and you can operate really successfully without it, or they've got so much and it's unusable. So it's a sloppy CRM database, or it's unsegmentable in any way that's usable for our campaigns. So I think whilst it is still important, it's great to be able to use it, sometimes it's unusable and you can survive without it and use what is provided by the platforms to create highly effective campaigns. But I do think that it isn't 100% needed and maybe as important as we used to talk about it, because there are so many clients that just can't access it.
So just to add, I think Lavinia makes a great point, right? It's not about how much first party data you have. You might have a lot of data, but what is the quality of that data?
100%.
And what kind of filters do you apply on that when you actually reach? So how do you do the categorization? How do you segment those audiences? And how do you actually use them in your campaigns is a lot more important than, like, I have like kind of where I grew up in Mumbai. There used to be a mom and pop store right next to our house, and like I clearly remember once my mom went to buy some vegetables there, and she repeated that task like for 3 weeks in a row, and she bought like I think like kind of a certain kind of a vegetable. The 4th week on a Sunday, the guy called us up and he said, "Oh, by the way, I have already prepared that bag. Should I just deliver it to you?" So that's great use of first party data. Probably he had 5 such customers, but that's how you need to actually implement first party data and use it for your consumers, right? So it's not about whether AI can of course help it, but these strategies need to be like kind of customized for the kind of users you're going after.
Yeah. So the interesting bit, we obviously have got so much control, so much information from our first party data, and then we build our campaigns and we build our targeting, and then we kind of give it to platforms. Are we giving too much control to the platforms to deliver the conversions for our clients?
See, I think first thing we have to remember is that the platforms are of course trying to optimize towards the client's KPI when you use algorithmic like bidding. But I think the key KPI for them as a company and like kind of a publicly listed company which is owned by shareholders, the key KPIs for them is to increase shareholder value, which means that they need to actually maximize on revenue. So I think the key KPI for all these algorithms is for brands to spend as much money as possible on them. And of course, there could be a secondary KPI, where it's trying to optimize towards the brand's like kind of true KPI as well. So as a company, the way we come into this is we are like kind of a consultant on which algorithms are better than the other, and we help our clients understand whether in this case they need to run manual campaigns or whether they need to run algorithmic campaigns. And there is that kind of understanding, that depth, right? Because it's very easy to say that, oh, you just take a bunch of creatives and put it on one of the platforms and let it run and it'll hit the objectives. And it's a lot more complicated than that when you look at the lens of platforms trying to maximize their revenue. So you need to actually look at it from the lens of how do we actually get maximum value for the brand. And when you go into that depth, the reality is very different. So it it is some algorithmic campaigns work really well, but you have to also mix it with smartly with some kind of manual campaigns here and there so that it gives our clients the best returns.
That's really great to hear that there is still space for human creativity and human judgment. So, and I'm guessing a big part of that is testing. So how do we test effectively within the platforms that are already auto-optimizing? So how do we do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think in some ways the platforms have made it easy to test within their platform, but harder to test across platforms. In fact, we talked about measurement before. That's one of the biggest challenges that we have is testing and optimizing across platforms, and that's a problem we're solving for our clients all the time with media mix modeling, incrementality in our OneView tool. So yeah, I'd say that those are the challenges, and that's what we look to do for them.
But I think it's great. Let the platforms optimize the easy things and leave the bigger questions for the minds in an agency to figure out. So I think now our testing focuses on much bigger questions than A/B between two creatives. It's more about testing strategies, testing incrementality across channels. Now we can focus on the bigger questions. So I think it's great to a degree. It allows us to completely redistribute our energy into much more impactful places.
People have always been different. I will be different to you and you will be different to me. But what has changed in marketing that it's not broad strokes anymore. We could drive that personalized experience and make a specific ad be meaningful or inspirational to someone, be that somebody who loves the Beatles or somebody who loves the niche little indie group out there. And I think that's wonderful. But question to you, do you think this abundance of data out there drives better decisions or actually makes more noise?
You need clarity, what you need from data, because there could be like billions of rows of data, or it could be one small sheet of data with some like, but if you don't have clarity, you can take a lot of very good and rich data and make a mess of it. But if you have clarity on what you're going after and what kind of behavior you want to change, right, from your consumers, you can actually do it with a small amount of data as well. So of course, more data is great, but what is more important is clarity and clear strategy of what you want to do with it.
Data doesn't define success or failure. What you do with the data defines success or failure.
And I think that answers Jim's point. How do you still miss in this day and age? You misread your data. You don't have the clarity. So attention has become one of the most talked about concepts in marketing, but also probably the most misunderstood. Audiences are constantly shifting, our consumers are changing, their attention span is now seconds. Is attention the new currency, or is it just another proxy metric?
Attention has always been the currency. I don't think it's any new currency, right? Like, I think to the point that Kabir said, it was just like before there was less options and today there are like more options. And but yeah, like attention has always been the currency, like from a brand's perspective, from entertainment perspective, from every perspective. So I don't think like anything has changed from that thing. And I also disagree, Turan, like a lot of people say that, oh, attention spans are coming down, right? But actually if you see, I was reading, right, like Hollywood movies are getting longer and longer, right? Like billions of people go to see a 3-hour Marvel movie, right? So if it was getting shorter and shorter, it should have been 1-hour movies, right? Like there are 10-hour series being made which people are binge watching, right? Like so I don't think like attention span is also coming down, but yeah, like what is getting difficult is, are you interesting enough for a consumer to pick you, right? Like because there are so many options, like the bar of quality has just increased a lot more.
So like I think like and so that's a great point, right? And I think over the last say 30-40 years, right, with the evolution of digital and AI and all of that, I think the key thing that has happened over the years is that in 30 years ago or even 20 years ago, brands could buy attention. And if you have a lot of budget, you could ensure that you are top of mind of your consumers. However, that reality of the past has completely been broken. You might be spending billions of dollars on TV ads and YouTube and Meta and everywhere, but if you're not interesting enough, if you're not actually making a point, you will completely be ignored, because the users of today are not just watching TV, they're probably playing a game on their phone while watching TV as well. So you have to be interesting enough for them to be. So that is something which is like clearly changed, which we've seen the evolution of over there.
You mentioned creators as part of that question, and I agree. Attention is so important, and it's hard to earn. But looking at it from a consumer's perspective, they're overwhelmed with all of the media that's out there. So creators are broken through because they have trust. Brands can earn a consumer's trust too, and that's what we help them do by having the right content, the right message, the right information for them. We want to earn consumers' trust and gain their attention that way.
So does it mean that reaching the right audience does not necessarily means that it's guaranteed meaningful attention?
So yeah, for sure, that's just the beginning. Finding the right audience is a way to, for our clients to be smart about their budget, because it's expensive to reach consumers, of course.
Thank you for having a great discussion today. It's been fantastic to talk about all of those diverse topics, and we covered a lot of things that have changed, but it's fantastic to know that the core principles of marketing and the core marketing truth are still there to stay, and we as marketers and as humans still have an important part to play in it.